Are you ready for our biggest block? Are you a little scared? Hey Kimberbell friends, Cristin here, and we are continuing with the Spring Showers quilt. And today we are going to work on our biggest block. So we are going to do the toadstool block. It is on page 35 of our booklet, and it's a big one with a lot of pieces to it. So just get ready. We'll do it together. Don't worry. All right, so what we need, let's get started. So the first thing that we need is our big piece of fabric. So mine's folded in half. I will iron that out before I start. It's just so that it fit in my little packet here. You know, we've been using these packets to organize our fabrics. So on this one, it is the blue stripes, and it's kind of a sky blue, I don't know, striped fabric. So this one we are supposed to cut to 12.5 by 10.5. I actually cut mine to 12.5 by 12.5 because I had extra. And the reason I did that is because I wasn't sure which way that it's going to be on our hoop. And I didn't want to have to worry about that when pre-cutting. So I just went ahead and I made it bigger so that whatever direction it is, I can put it how I want it to be in my hoop. So that's my little tip of what works for me. I made it a little bit bigger just so I don't have to worry about the direction. So 12.5 by 10.5 is what we officially need for this main fabric. Make sure to back this with fusible stabilizer, and like I always say, check it to make sure that there aren't any little threads in there. So I can see, actually I have one and it got ironed in. And the reason you don't want that is because you could see it on the inside. Hopefully mine won't show. There is a little thread in there, but I think it'll be fine. All right, so 12.5 by 10.5 for our main fabric. And then there's a list of supplies, so just stay with me here. So the first one is our grass. So this is going to be cut to 11.5 by 2. I did back it with fusible stabilizer. It is like an olive green, silky solid. There's no design on it. This is for the grass. So 11.5 by 2, one piece of that. And then the next one is for our Toadstool 1 stem. And it is a cream colored, it's got a little dot, oh there it goes. All right, a cream colored silky solid. I backed it with fusible stabilizer, and this is for the stem of Toadstool 1, so basically that mushroom. And it is 2 by 3, 2 by 3 in the creamy silky solid. And then a small one. So this one is for Toadstool 3, the stem of Toadstool 3, and we're going to cut this to 1.5 by 2. So just a little piece. It's that creamy silky solid again, 1.5 by 2. And then my favorite, the coral silky solid. It's so pretty. I don't know if you can see that really well with the lighting, but it's very pretty. It's a silky solid. This is for Toadstool 1 gills. So that's the part that's underneath the mushroom. That's what I'm calling it anyway. This is 3 by 2. So this way, 3 by 2 for the part that's underneath Toadstool 1. And then this, it's like a tan gray linen is what it looks like. I don't know. It's silky solid, light tan gray. And this one we're going to cut to 2 by 3, and it is for the stem of Toadstool 2. So the toadstool that's in the middle, the mushroom in the middle, this is for the stem. So 2 by 3. I did back up fusible stabilizer. And then we have foam. We have 2 pieces of foam. So the first one is going to be 6 by 2.5, so this way, and it's going to work for the Toadstools 1 and 2 and all together. And then it's 6 by 2.5, it's the Flexifoam. And then for the next piece of Flexifoam, it's 4.5 by 3, so this way, 4.5 by 3, and that's going to be for the Toadstools 3 through 6. These are going to be so cute, all puffy. Oh my gosh, that'll be fun. Fun, fun, fun. Kimberbell thinks of everything. All right, and then for our felt, this is that antique white. It's for the Toadstool 1 cap, so the top of the mushroom, and that's 3.5 by 2.5 in antique white. Don't back this with anything, just leave felt as is. 3.5 by 2.5. And then we have this cherry red. So cherry red in 3.5 by 3, again, a piece of felt, don't back it with anything, 3.5 by 3. This is for the middle mushroom, Toadstool 2 for the top of the mushroom in cherry red. And then we have gingerbread, so pretty. I love gingerbread, by the way. It's making me hungry. Gingerbread for, what is this one? Toadstool 3 cap. So the top of the mushroom for mushroom 3 or Toadstool 3. 2.5 by 2.5 in the felt. Don't back it with anything. Gingerbread felt. What's your favorite kind of cookie? My favorite is gingerbread. What's your favorite? I want to know. Sorry, I'm thinking of cookies now. All right, prickly pear. We'll think about prickly pears instead. So prickly pear embroidery felt. This is for the toadstool caps on 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to cut this to 3 by 3. Don't back it with anything. It's felt. Prickly pear. I'm not thinking about cookies anymore now. Prickly pear. That does not sound appealing to me. So prickly pear in 3 by 3, and that's for the 3 toadstools, 4, 5, and 6. All right, and then sky blue applique glitter. On all of these applique glitters, I can say that. So you want to always remove the topping, and we'll go over that as we get closer. I always have a hard time doing it when I'm on camera. So take off the top layer always, and we always iron it too. So I will go over that step by step, but just don't forget to take off that sticky topping. So on your sky blue applique glitter, that is so pretty, by the way. Oh my goodness, isn't that gorgeous? Sky blue applique glitter, we are going to cut this to 2 by 2. I haven't cut mine. It came like this in the kit, and I'm going to use it for something else. You can see we're not going to use all of that. So 2 by 2, I just took it right out of my embellishment kit like that. And then the light gold applique glitter, same thing. Take the topping off. And this is for the yellow butterfly. By the way, this is for the blue butterfly. This is for the yellow butterfly. And this one, again, 2.5 by 2. And I didn't pre-cut it. It came like this out of the embellishment kit, and I'm quite certain we'll have extra left over. So on the blue one, it was 2 by 2. On the yellow one, it's 2.5 by 2 of the glitter. All right, so now let's talk about quilting. This is a big block. So I haven't gone over what will work for the 5 by 7 people yet, but I will. I will do that as I get working on my block and thinking about what will work for you. And then we're gonna quilt it. So on the quilting, I am going to use Insect 3. I haven't used it before. I think that will be really fun. It's butterflies. How cute will that be with these little mushrooms, and there are butterflies on it. Remember the yellow and the blue butterfly. So we're gonna have butterfly quilting. How fun will that be? So, and the fabric isn't so busy that we won't be able to see it. So I think that'll be really fun. So I'm using that Insect 3. This is a blue design. So the nice thing is since the people that have a 5 by 7 hoop as your largest hoop, you will need to rehoop this for sure. I will think about which sizes and how many hoopings and all that, but you can use this design. So that's really nice. When it's a blue design, it means that it doesn't go into the seams, because the ones that go into the seams, the orange designs, those will go over your initial hooping. And so you don't want that. You want a standalone design that is not going to have any traveling lines. So this is a blue design. It's a standalone design, so you could use this for rehooping. So that's a very nice thing, is you can use Insect 3. All of us can use Insect 3 if you choose. You can use any design that you want. The size is going to be 8 by 10. Since our final cut size is 8.5 by 10.5, it's really 10.5 by 8.5. That means that we want a quilting design that is 8 by 10. So like I said, I'm using Insect 3. It's the butterflies for our quilting, and I will go over other information for those that are using a smaller hoop. This one does have special cut instructions, so pay attention when we get to the end. We'll go over that step by step. Let's see, is there anything else? Quilting design and special cut instructions, and our biggest block with lots and lots of little pieces. So this will be a fun one, and we'll feel very accomplished when we finish this one. All right, I think that's about it. mesh cutaway in our hoop. I backed all of my fabrics, but not the felt. I think I went over everything. Don't forget to take the sticky top off of the glitter. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, for those that are using a 5x7 hoop for this project, you're going to need a double hoop, and it's simple to do. So I'm using an aqua piece of felt as my main fabric because this is just a test for me. So I am going to recommend folding it in half, both horizontally and vertically, this way and this way, and I recommend ironing the crease. So you're going to see a crease down the center this way, and then you would fold again. It's easier if you're doing like do this one and then do this one and iron it, but I'm going to show you without ironing it. So I would just make my crease from the center and then fold it over again. All right, and then what you want to do is take a water-soluble pen and mark that center. All right, so we know that we have our center right there. So there's my center mark. And then once you have your center mark, you would measure 1 inch over. So you can see I've got my center mark here. Here's 1 inch marker. So I would line that up with my center mark and then mark another crosshair horizontally and vertically. So now I have my center mark and my 1 inch mark. And if you have the clear blue tiles, this is super simple. So you're going to find your 4x4 and your 4x6 tiles, 4x4 and 4x6 tiles. And from the 1 inch mark, not the center mark, but from the 1 inch mark, we did the center just to be able to get that 1 inch mark. So from the 1 inch mark, you would line up your 4x4 and your 4x6 next to each other. And just like we did on our table runner project with the clear blue tiles, you would mark your center and mark the crosshairs right in 4x4, crosshairs 4x6. All right, and it doesn't matter which side that you're doing. So if you wanted to do the 4x6 first, same thing. All right, and then you would do another 4x6 and another 4x4. And since we're using a blue design, I'm using Insect 3, a blue design will make it so that it stays within that box. So very simple if you're doing the clear blue tiles. Like I said, just mark your fabric and you're all ready to go. For those that don't have the clear blue tiles, I'm going to show another way. This is the simplest way and the most accurate for sure. If you are rehooping, using the CBTs will make it very, very simple, but I will show you another way as well. And just one more note. So even though our main fabric is large, our main fabric is 12.5 by 10.5, we always base our quilting on our final cut size. And the final cut size of this project is 10.5 by 8.5. And that's why when we're laying down these tiles for a visual for you, you can see that we still have an inch or so on each side. We'll do it this way also. All right, so that's why we don't want to use the center mark because we're using a 4x4 and a 4x6. So 1 inch over. So you could even just do this one in ironing and not write on it and use this one as your writing marker. And again, either way will work. So if you're using not the center, from here, then it would be the shorter side. So the 4x4 and the 4x6, another 4x4 and 4x6. So when you line it up, just make sure that you've got your edges still. Very easy to do. All right, and like I said, you would mark each of these so that when you get it onto your hoop and into your embroidery machine, you know exactly where to have that needle land. Very, very simple. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these just to give you that visual. So again, you would line it up and mark it. So your center mark, that's the most important part, because that tells you where your needle is going to land. You want to line up your needle
with that, right in 4x4. And then your next one, you line up right alongside it. And you would mark it, that center mark, that's where your needle will go. Right in 4x6. These extra holes, ignore those, don't mark in those. Those are, I put holes in my CBT so that I could organize them on a binder. All right, so again, line it up. You can do one at a time, it doesn't matter. Four. And then line that up right next to it. Oh, so by the way, you could, if you don't have your two right next to you, you could easily do this. Mark those edges. That one's already marked. And that makes it so that you can not have this one right next to you. And you can just line it up. And it's going to be super accurate. That's the purpose of the CBTs. Right in the 4x6. And if you didn't already do these, you would mark these so that you know where the next tile goes. So you would put it right there. All right, so that's your visual on how to do the CBTs and get it marked up. Very easy. You can see how accurate that's going to be. Okay, for those that have the CBTs and are going to be using a 5x7 hoop, I'm going to give a visual without actually stitching it, so I don't have to do it too many ways. So you would go to embroidery and pull up your first design. So you can use either the 4x4 or the 4x6, it doesn't matter, whichever you feel like doing first. I'm going to do, what is this one, 4x4. All right, set. Okay, so all I did, a couple things. So all I did was load the CBT version. This is the one that does not have the placement and tack down for the batting. And so what you would do is you would take your main fabric and use a piece of batting that is 1 inch larger than your fabric so that you can see it on the sides. It just makes it easy to make sure that you can see it and know what's there. So that's the easiest way if you have the CBTs, is just use one piece of batting versus all of the little ones. You could do the little ones if you prefer, but the easiest way if you have the CBTs is just to have one large piece of batting. So let's pretend that I've got my batting on here. I'm going to reach around my phone. So, and the tripod. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so say that we have this already, and like I said, I've got my batting attached to it. So if you're going to start with your 4x4, here's my 4x4, my 4x6, another 4x4, and another 4x6. So all I would do is I would position my fabric that has my batting right over the center mark here. And you could put your foot down to check to make sure that it's really there. And you would go ahead and do your 4x4 quilting design. So then when that one is done, you would then move it over so simply and find your 4x6 center mark. All right, and you would do your 4x6 version here. And then make sure to change your quilting design on your machine, obviously, or you could do the 4x4 first and then the 4x4 and then do the two 4x6 designs. So super simple. If you have the CBTs, it's just easy and very accurate. So all you're doing is you are centering it over that line or that center mark. And you can also, another tip, if I can turn this, let's see, go back to the machine, and if you go to the button here, all right, so if you were to go to this on my machine, I don't know about each machine, but I assume that they all have something similar. On mine, I can go to this, and once I have it centered on my center mark, I can use these buttons to see if it's lined up correctly. So let's try that. All right, so once I have it over my center mark, I would hit that left and right button to show if I'm on that center line. And that's why we do the crosshairs. That makes it super simple just to make sure that we're lined up right. And you can do it up and down as well. And you can see that I've got my fabric straight, because you could have it centered here and have your fabric all wonky. And then by using those guides, you'll be like, oh, wait, I'm way off, right? You could see that it is not lined up. So if let me do it zoomed in here. So see how I can see that my fabric is off. So I can make sure that my fabric is straight by using those crosshairs. So if I start from the center, here's my center, and then I can eyeball it and think, oh yeah, my fabric is straight. So then I can use those guides that will show me where it's going to stitch to make sure that my fabric is straight. So again, all I did is, so this mark here, this one that has like this little arrow, I click on that, and then it shows me these positions so that I can check the left and the right and the up and the down. So that's what I do when I'm using the CBTs. And again, you would just get one of them done and then move it over. Super simple. And if you have a magnetic hoop, you're all set. So I don't have a magnetic hoop, so I would have to change my stabilizer on each one. But if you have a magnetic hoop, you wouldn't need to do that. But again, if you have one large piece of batting, that will make it easier. Then you're not, and you can use the CBT version so that you can have your batting all together, and then you would just trim at the end around the stitching. But again, you can do the block by block version if you prefer. That would be super simple too. You just would not load the CBT version of the design. You would load the block by block version of the design. And I did a video yesterday that showed the difference and how the one has the placement and tack down for the batting and one is just the quilting design. So this is the CBT version and it is just the quilting design. So that is assuming that I have my batting already attached. You could use the block by block method and do the same technique, but with adding in the batting placement. But the lines for the design would stay the same as far as that center mark and the sides and all that. So CBT, easy. Clear blue tiles, easy. And I'm going to show if you don't have those also. Okay, for those doing the block by block method and using a 5x7 hoop, you would load either your 4x4 design or your 4x6. It doesn't matter which one you start with as long as your fabric is prepared that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do the 4x6 first. And when I say have your fabric ready in that way, what I mean is, so we have our center marking here, which you're going to ignore at this point because we just used that to make our 1 inch away mark. So you could, like I said, use just your iron to get this part and then measure from the iron marking over 1 inch from there so that you don't get confused on which one. You could mark it out with your water soluble pen, it doesn't matter. But when I say that you want to make sure that your fabric is lined up, you can see that we have less room on this side from this marking and more room on this side. So if you're doing the 4x6, you would start over here. If you're doing the 4x4, you would start over here. So that's what I mean by just make sure your fabric is lined up with whichever size that you're going to start with. So I'm going to start with my 4x6. So I'm going to start with this as my center guide. And for now, we're just going to go ahead and do the first 3 stitches or steps, the first 3 steps on our stabilizer, which is the batting placement and the batting tack down, and then the placement stitch for our main fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. All right, once you have your batting placement and tack down and trim, see we've got our 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I did run the third step, which is the placement of our main fabric, but it's actually not necessary at all. You can bypass steps 3 and 4, but one thing I did do is I ironed my main fabric. Mine's felt, but your main fabric, from the 1 inch mark, I measured all the way, or not measured, but ironed all the way vertically and horizontally, all the way across, just so that I can use that as my guide. You could use a water soluble pen to do that if you prefer, but if you're using CBTs like I showed earlier, then you wouldn't need that because you've got it all marked and you can use those lines to make sure that your fabric is straight. But if you don't have the CBTs, the clear blue tiles, then this is a workaround. And the first hooping is harder, but it's doable. So like I said, I ironed all the way from that 1 inch marker over from the center, and then both horizontally and vertically, and we're going to line up our fabric. So the way that we want to do that is on the batting. So from the batting line, not from this. That's why I was saying that this one isn't really necessary, but we are going to line up our fabric, reaching around the camera here. So you can feel around and make sure, don't forget, since we're using the 4x6, I'm going to use the longer part of my fabric since I'm using the 4x6 first. If you were doing the 4x4, you would start on the smaller part. So from here, all right, so an easy way to do this, or easier, would be to find that center mark here, pull down your fabric. I have it marked on both sides since I showed you the CBT version also. So you could certainly mark your fabric on both sides if you prefer, but you're going to just use that iron seam. Make sure it's straight. Get your ironed seam and line that up, with the top of your batting, and then peek underneath for that the horizontal line, the vertical line, whatever, it depends on how your fabric is turned, and then push your fabric back under the needle. So it's a little bit of a guessing game for this first one, but you really want it to be straight. You want it as close to, it's hard to do around a camera too, I'll tell you. Oh boy. All right, so feel your ironed mark and feel your batting, and you want those lined up as best as you can with your fabric as straight as you can. All right, and then you are going to want to bypass the 4th step. You don't want to stitch that because then it will go over your next hooping. So on my machine, I've shown you lots of times how to bypass, but it is, let's see if I can zoom in. Okay, so on my machine, it's this button here, the little needle with the plus minus, and then you would go up to here and click the down button. That goes to the next step, which is the quilting, and we want to do the quilting next. Check once again to make sure that your fabric is how you want it, with the longer part if you're doing 4x6, the shorter part if you're doing the 4x4. And notice that it doesn't matter on the butterflies because they're going all different ways. Some are going left, some are going right, some are going down. It doesn't matter at all for that part of it. All right, and then you would tape in place. Since we are not going to use the tack down stitch or the basting stitch of our main fabric, you would want to tape this in place. Mine, having felt on the batting, is holding it very well, so I'm not worried about it, but for the fabric, you don't want it to move at all. So just make sure that you are as close to the marks that you can get it. Like I said, the edge of the batting and the edge of the batting lined up with the seam that you made, or the ironed crease that you made. And we're going to go ahead and run the quilting design. All right, so once that first block of quilting is done, Look at that, right on the edge there of that center line, and this center line as well, right on the edge. So that was really good. It came out very nice right on the edge there. So we're going to go ahead and unhoop this and remove the excess stabilizer and run through the first 2 steps or 3 steps of the next block. All right, once you have your second part done with the batting already, then we are going to line up our batting. So we know that we want a 4x4 here and a 4x4 here. We did one 4x6. This one is the other 4x6. So we're going to line it up with that first one. So the easy way to do that is to fold back your batting your main fabric, and you can see the batting. See that? So you can see the batting, and we know that we want it here, so we're going to just line it up, batting to batting, very simply, batting to batting. So you can see the batting. Hopefully, if I can zoom in. All right, so you can see the batting from the first hooping right here, and we're just going to line that up exactly with the second hooping. So this is our second hooping here. First hooping, we are lining up the batting, and we are going, once we have it exactly lined up, hopefully you can see this. Once you have it lined up top and bottom and exactly right on the sides, you don't want it to overlap, you want it just batting to batting. And once you have that, then fold it back, keeping it in place, and tape in place. Tape your fabric down. All right, as you saw, I took the hoop off and brought it to a flat desk and lined up my batting that way. It's harder to do if you keep it in the hoop, but I just want to make sure that you remember, line up the first batting with the second batting. And like I said, if you're doing it on a flat surface, it's easier because you really want those lined up just right. And then tape in place. I've taped it in 2 areas so that you can make sure that it's going to stitch right there and your fabric's not going to move. It will go right here, lined up with our first batting, or I'm sorry, our first hooping. All right, once the second hooping is done, you can see how you did with lining it up. Wow. So that works. It takes a little bit of effort, but it works. That is lined up perfectly. It looks just seamless. So we're going to do the same thing with a 4x4 and a 4x4. So here are the first 2 hoopings done, and you can see it's just seamless. It looks like it's all one hooping. It's perfect. And look at the back. So the back shows you how they are perfectly lined up, and they are right next to each other. So lining up the batting will work for you as well. So we have 2 more hoopings to do. I have lines on the back of mine just because I also showed it using CBT, but I'm doing this side for those that don't have the CBTs. All right, now you're going to choose the 4x4 design, and same thing, run through the placement and the tack down of the batting, the first 2 steps. All right, once you have your third hooping with your placement and tack down of your batting, just like we did before, we are going to take our main fabric and fold it back so that we can see the batting from the first hooping. So here is our batting. We're going to line it up with our third hooping. So you can see this. Hard to do it on the camera, but it will be easier for you. All right, so just fold back that fabric enough that you can see the batting and line it up exactly. Let me see if I turn this. Can you see it better? All right, so the first hooping with the third hooping, lining it up, getting it exactly right on. So keep in mind, you want to trim this as close to the stitch line without cutting the stitch line as you can on both edges so that it will line up right next to each other. All right, so you can see I've got them lined up just right. There we go. And then I'm going to fold it back and tape in place. That's how you know that your fabric is straight when you are lining it up. Exactly with the batting. You can see it unconnected. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and bypass the steps of the third and fourth steps, the placement and the tack down of the main fabric, because we don't need that. And we are going to just run the quilting design. One real quick thing to mention, you can see on the 4x6 version, there are butterflies going down and up and upside down and left. They're all over the place. On the 4x4, they are going, one's going right, one is going left, but they are both upright. So when you do it this way, they're going to both of the bees, the wings will be up toward the sky. And same thing with this one, you wouldn't want to turn your fabric. So just keep that one in mind for the 4x4. If you were to turn this fabric sideways, which why would you? That wouldn't make any sense. But if you did, then your bees are going to be going sideways. So when you do your first one, just make sure that your second one is lined up with your first one. So however you're going to do it. If you did your fabric turned the opposite way, which would be totally fine, like here, let me just take it off and show you. If I did it this way, if I lined up my batting here and folded it back and did my fabric this way, that's totally fine because it's going to match with these bees either way. But when you do this next one, you just want to make sure that it is directional. It's going the same way as the one that you're doing here. So it doesn't matter whether your fabric is turned this way or that way. This way or that way doesn't matter. You wouldn't want to do it this way. You just want it to be this way or this way, and whichever one you do the same for the other one. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so like I said, it doesn't matter if your fabric is going up or down. That part doesn't matter. I did it this way just so I have more room over here. Either way, it'll go off to the side that way. It doesn't matter. But one thing is you want to make sure to bypass the next couple of steps. So just like we did before, we're going to bypass 3, bypass 4, and it goes to the quilting design. All right, once the fourth one is done, go ahead and remove it from the hoop, remove the stabilizer, and run the first 2 steps of the fourth hooping. All right, and on to the fourth and last hooping. So this is what I was pointing out about the butterflies. So my instinct is to put it this way because there's one left, and I don't know why, but that's my instinct. But see, then my butterflies would be upside down. So see here, the butterflies. So I want to make sure to do the butterflies facing in the same direction on this 4x4, because on the 4x6 they're going all different ways, but on the 4x4 they're both upright. So easy to do. All I'm going to do now, last one, is line up here and also line up here. Oops, sorry, not in video. That would help. Line up here with the batting from here and the batting from here. So the batting from this hooping and this hooping, we're going to line up 2 ways. So right here, so that one is lined up, and then up here also. So it's really just lining up the corner at this point. And then fold it over and tape in place. You want to make sure that nothing is overlapping. You don't want your batting overlapping or your design will probably overlap because we're right on the edge there. That's how we want it to be. So you saw I lined it up with this batting, or you can also check it this way. All right, so put it how you want it, tape it in place, and we will run the last hooping. All right, everything's lined up and ready for the last hooping. So see, I have my fabric going off to the right just like I did on this one so that I know that my butterflies will be upright. You can also tell from looking at the design that you're going to do next. There, so upright bees and in the right location for my bees there. Or not bees, sorry, butterflies. And again, don't forget to bypass because we're currently on the third step, which we don't want. So we're going to reach around the phone and bypass and get to the quilting design. Okay, and this one is done. So you can see this is the back. You can see everything is lined up perfectly, and from the front looks like it was all done in one big huge hoop. All perfect, seamless, no problems at all. So very doable with a 5x7 hoop. Quick note, if you are using a 5x7 hoop and doing 4 hoopings, you are going to want 4 pieces of batting. 2 of them will be 5x5. Those are for the 4x4 hoops. And then for the 2 that are the 4x6 designs, you're going to want 5x7 pieces of batting, 2 of those. If you're using the CBTs, you would want 1 large piece of batting. At least that's how I would do it. You could do the block by block if you chose, but otherwise you could do a piece of batting that is 12x10, or actually I think I'd even do 13x11 just so that it's larger than your main fabric. If you're using clear blue tiles like these, then you would just have 1 large piece of batting. I would recommend 1 inch larger than your main fabric so that you can see it and keep it all straight and so on. If you don't have the clear blue tiles and you are measuring up 2 inches from the center, then you would use 2 pieces of batting. So if you're using the clear blue tiles, you can use just the CBT design. You don't have to do the whole batting placement and tack down. But I showed how to do that on the 5x7, so you know how to do it. And if you don't have the CBTs, then of course you would want to use the block by block method. And for that, you would want 2 pieces of batting, one that is 3x11 and the other that is 7x11. And that will work for your 2 hoopings on a 6x10 hoop. All right, for those of you that are going to use a 6x10 hoop, the logic is the same as how we did the 5x7, but instead of measuring 1 inch over from the center, we're going to measure 2 inches up from the center. So same thing as we did for the 5x7. You would fold your fabric in half and create a crease along the long edge, all right? And then from there, you would measure 2 inches up. So from here, from this center crease, 2 inches up, and then you can see with this visual of the CBT, you would do 1 of your hoopings in the 2x10 block, and then your other hooping would be the 6x10 block. So 2 inches up from the center, do a 2x10 quilting design, and then right below that you would do a 6x10 quilting design. Very simple, same logic as the tutorial for the 5x7 people.
So I want to go over one other thing. So since we are using an 8x10 quilting design, a lot of you may think that you can use your 8x12 hoop and be totally fine. You actually can't. So you could if you take out steps 3 and 4. So let me just explain that real quick. That 8x10 quilting design does not fit in an 8x12 hoop. And the reason for that is the placement stitch and the tack down stitch of the main fabric. Those measure 8.5 by 10.5. So that 8.5 makes it not fit in our 8x12 hoop. So you have some options. You can use a bigger hoop. If you have a bigger hoop available, I will very likely use my 9x14 hoop on this. But if your largest hoop is an 8x12, it's easy. You can bring it into software and take out steps 3 and 4. 3 and 4. So remember, number 1 is the placement for our batting. Number 2 is the tack down of our batting. Number 3 is the placement for the main fabric. Number 4 is the tack down of the main fabric. And number 5 is the quilting design. So those 3 and 4 steps are the ones that are larger than our embroidery hoop because they're a 1/2 inch larger so that we have our seam allowance. So if you take those out, it's not a problem. All you would do is tape your fabric down in your hoop. So that basting stitch is a nice to have. I really like the basting stitch. It helps to not have puckers, but it's a nice to have. It's not a requirement. If it's going to make it so that you can't use your hoop and you don't have a larger hoop option, just take those steps out. Very easy to do. I've shown it in software lots of times. You literally open it up in Embrilliance Essentials is what I'm using. I click that little button that shows all the steps and you click 3, delete. 4, delete. Easy to do. And then do a save as. Always do a save as because you never know, later down the road you might have a machine with a bigger hoop, so you want to keep those for later. You want to keep those steps, so you would just save it as, remove steps 3 and 4 or adjusted or whatever it is, but you would save that file, save as. So again, it will not fit in an 8x12 hoop unless you take out steps 3 and 4. Okay, so to the 5x7 people and the 6x10 people, there is a PDF included on the CD that has specific directions on how to hoop the toadstool block once you have it all quilted. I showed you how to do the quilting. I'm going to walk you through the embroidery as well. It's done in 3 sections, 3 hoopings, and I'm going to give some information, but I'm not going to stitch it all out again. I don't have all that fabric again, but I will give information on how to do it. So the first part is it says to fold your quilting design, your main fabric, in half. So we would fold it with the shorter side, the 10.5 and the 12.5. So the shorter side in half this way. All right. And then it says in the PDF directions to measure in 1 inch from the edge. So we're lucky that our 1 inch is already where our batting is, so we will use that as our guide. So for now, fold it in half. Like I said, the shorter side, 10.5 inch up here, 12.5 here, and then fold it in half here. All right, so that, and then our 1 inch will be right here. So this is easy. This part is easy. So we're going to go ahead and stitch out the placement that has a little area, and we'll go over this. So for now, just fold it in half and get your 1 inch marker. You could mark this if you want, but really once you've already got it quilted, it's easy because we have our batting there. All right. Okay, load the first hooping, which is the 2 mushrooms, as you can see on my screen here. This is the first of 3 hoopings for the embroidery designs. And then after you've got that ready, it is going to stitch out this little placement stitch. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, so the first step is to stitch out this placement. You can see there, I've done it in red. It is a placement for where we're going to place our fabric, and there is a little tick mark on here, right here, and we're going to use that as our guide. Okay, so don't forget we have our fabric folded in half, and then we've got our 1-inch mark, which for us is easy because it's the batting. So we are going to line up our fabric right along that red line here. You can use your batting as your guide, that's easy. And then the top of the fold right up against the tick mark there. And then once you have that where you want it, then you're going to fold back your fabric. Don't forget to make sure that your fabric is straight. All right, and then fold it back, holding it in place carefully, and you're going to tape it in place here. Tape, 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 and get it just right. All right, so now that I have my tape, I'm going to do it one more time. So it's folded in half, and then we're going to line this up with the little tick mark. It's right here. There's a little tick mark here. We're going to line up our batting right at that tick mark. Make sure that our fabric is all straight, and then fold it back and tape in place. And then we're going to run the regular embroidery at this point. It will do a basting stitch around our main fabric. Even though we have our quilting, I would recommend doing the basting stitch. You can take it out afterward. It will help hold your fabric in place for the embroidery, but you can choose not to. It's up to you. If you tape really well, then you could trust that tape. Okay, so you can see that it did the basting stitch, and it goes right along the bottom edge of the quilting, and then a tad over, just a bit over on the left side, or it's the top here. But anyway, so the next thing is the grass. So I want to point something out. On the grass, we are going to stitch just part of it. See that opening at the bottom there? That is so that we can do on the next hooping the rest of the grass. So just don't trim your extra grass piece. I am not going to be doing all the applique pieces. Like I mentioned, I don't have all that fabric. So I just want to point out that I'm going to just do the outlines of things, but I will mention any things that are super important, like this grass. This one is very important. When you trim your grass, you are just going to trim around the edges, so around here, and not this part. The rest of the fabric for the grass will hang off, and just leave that as is. We will use it in the second hooping. All right, the last step of this first hooping for the toadstools is registration marks. You can see them. I put them in green. So there's one there, and then there is one there. So those are really important, and you want to do them in a thread color that you can see. We're going to use those to line up for our second hooping. All right, so next we're going to load the second part, part B of the toadstools, and we are going to stitch the registration marks right onto our stabilizer. Okay, so like I said, I have stitched out the registration marks onto my stabilizer, directly on the stabilizer. And then notice that I did take out all of the basting stitches around my block, and that will make it so that they don't run over each other and make it harder to get out. So take out your basting stitches, and then we are going to take 2 thumbtacks. I only have little decorative ones, but plain flathead ones would work best. So turn your hoop over to the back, and right in the middle of the registration mark, so you can see that the registration mark is here, like this. There's 2 of them, and right in the middle of that, right at that point, is where you want to put your thumbtack. So right in that center where it meets. And on to the next one, sorry. So right where the 2 lines meet, put your thumbtack through. And then you're going to put a piece of tape over the top just to hold it in place for a little while. Doing this one-handed. Okay, so just like this, and then turn your hoop to the front and find the registration marks on your fabric that we stitched out. So there's one here down at the bottom near the grass, and then another one up here under the butterfly. And you are going to same thing, so make sure your hoop is right. So the way that that registration mark is on your stabilizer, down like a little L, so you're going to position it that way. So you have to make sure and have that right. So like if you have the L here and then on here it's not an L, it's upside down, then you know that you're in the wrong direction. So you want it to be the same direction as the registration mark that is on your stabilizer. All right, and you are going to push through that thumbtack right through that center mark, just like we did on the back of the hoop. We're going to do that with the fabric as well. All right, you can see the thumbtack sticking out here. You're going to do it on this one as well. And you can see on the back that they're the little stitching, and you just guide that to the thumbtack that is sticking out. Make sure that it's right before you continue on. All right, so once you have both of these, then we are going to tape in place. So that was a really easy way to just make sure that our fabric is straight, that it's in the right position, and we're going to go ahead and tape our fabric in place at this point. And then we will run another basting stitch around our design. So real important fact here, once you have your fabric taped in place of how you want it, make sure to take those thumbtacks out. Do not leave the thumbtacks in. that it was just to guide our fabric to know where it should be. And then once it's taped in place, make sure to remove your thumbtacks. Very important fact. All right, and we're ready to go and stitch our basting stitch. Okay, so we did the basting stitch. You can see that I did it in green, and here's the rest of our design over there that I did in red. And here's those registration marks that we did earlier. So everything is lined up just right. Now notice that our basting stitch stops there. It's here, and that is because we have our grass that is going to be laying over here, and we don't want that to be in the way. So the basting stitch is partial, and we're going to go ahead and do the grass now. And same thing as before, we are going to lay down that grass, and we're going to trim around it and not trim anything here. We've already done this one. You can't see it here because I'm just doing the outlines at this point, but now we'll get to tack down the rest of that grass and trim it. All right, if you've lined it up just right with your first hooping with those registration marks, you'll see that it just lines up perfectly. And I just want to let you know that it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because there's a little bit of wiggle room because there's going to be grass over here. So it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but if you use those registration marks, it really does come out perfect. Okay, the last step of the second hooping is registration marks again for our last hooping. So our third hooping, we will use these registration marks right here the same way that we did the first two. Okay, we are on the last hooping. Are you as excited as I am? I doubt it. All right, so remember, we have our registration marks that we did from the last hooping, which was the second hooping. They are here, sorry, and here. And then on the next one, the third hooping, the last hooping, then we go ahead and we stitch out the registration marks again. So here they are. And then same thing, we are going to turn it to the back and make sure that those registration marks are going the same direction on your fabric as they are on the back of the hoop. For now, all that we're going to do on the back of our hoop is put a thumbtack through the center. So remember, there is an backwards L here. Okay, so right through the center, so right where it comes together, you're going to put a thumbtack through. Sorry, it's hard to do this and hold the phone. All right, right there. And then tape it in place. We will do a basting stitch again, but this is just to hold it in place while we get them situated where we want them. All right, so here's the next one. So again, right where the two corners meet. I'm just moving a thread out of the way so I can see it. Okay, so right where the center is, where the two lines meet, and then tape it in place, and then turn it over. And you can see the thumbtack sticking up. And from there, we're going to make sure that they are the same direction. So it is, you can see, sorry, over here, you can see that it is a backwards L, upside down L, I don't know what you would call it, but it is going this direction, same as on the stabilizer. It's going here. This one is going this way, and this one is going that way. So we are going to just find the center and put it through. So you can see it on the back if that's easier. You can do it from the front, put a finger there, whatever works, and push it through. All right, and once you have your fabric through the thumbtacks, then you're going to tape it in place like we did before. It will do a basting stitch, but this is to hold it in place until then. All right, and just like before, most important thing, take those thumbtacks out. Do not forget that. That would really be a bummer. All right, and we are ready to take this to our hoop and do our last hooping. Yahoo! right, after you finish stitching the last butterfly, you're going to take out those basting stitches, remove any excess stabilizer, take out the registration marks, and you are done. We still need to cut it though. And my shirt today is Be Kind. This is from So Cute Appliques, and the shirt is from Amazon. I will add a link. I have a couple of them. I really like this shirt. There's a few different color options, but the design is Be Kind by So Cute Appliques. It is applique inside, and then I think 3 different applique, 4. It looks like there's one for the flowers too. Really cute design from So Cute Appliques.